I never know whether I should just leave and let them, or then I always try to say something about there's no more pain, there's no more suffering. But sometimes I think they just want to be there with.
Well, there's two types of bereaving, of course. I mean, there's the one-on-one, you with a single person. How do you handle that versus, say, someone who's in a group situation? Again, some of the answers I've got is often, when the euthanasia decision is made, it's not just a one-on-one as it may have been in the West. It's often 2 or 3 or 4 people, maybe siblings, mother, father, or brothers, if it's an adult group.
It's usually a group, and I mean, I quickly learned. So in the West, you would just take a needle and you would just do it, just give the drug there and pray that the vein holds, and hopefully you have an assistant, because often in the UK you don't have an assistant, you're on your own. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I quickly learned it's best to put a IV catheter in. So that you have more control over the situation, because they oftentimes hold it. You've got lots of people around you, and a couple of times I've actually given the animals sedatives, because one dog definitely picked up something was wrong and he was getting very anxious, and you've got to make sure that they're okay. Mm-hmm. So much more of a performance. You have to make sure all the role players put your catheter in, so that you don't have that stress. There was once an aggressive dog. You couldn't get near it anyway, so I had a bit of a...
But that dog was loved by the owners?
Yeah. It was a rescue dog. They're always a little bit more...
Yeah. Anxious. Well, I'm then going to take you down... I've got one more thing to talk about with economic euthanasia. Has it been your experience? I mean, it's easy to judge people. And of course, in Hong Kong, it's quite unique in some ways, but even in the West, so it's probably not a correct statement, but I'll still make it. It's, often hard to judge people. So, I've been told I'll tell you an anecdote that I was given, that the person got told it was going to be $6,000, and the person said, I don't have that. And then, euthanasia was discussed, and the person said no, and next thing you know, this person is on the phone, and all of a sudden 2 or 3 or 4 cars pull up at the clinic over a period of a time, 30 minutes or 60 minutes, and $6,000 is found for the down payment for the procedure. And has that been your experience, that that maybe economic euthanasia, as you said, people are reluctant to discuss euthanasia, they're more likely to try and do what they can so the decision about death is not made? Have you experienced that sort of anecdote?
Not as dramatic like that, but sometimes people they would try to. So, and sometimes you kind of say, a few times well, what can you afford? If I think it's worthwhile, the procedure is definitely going to make a difference, then I'd rather negotiate about how much can you afford? Can we meet you in any way? All
right. Okay, that's interesting, because not many people have said that answer, so that's interesting. So, and
that's also nice with Maggie. She's much more happy. She will be happy for us doing that. And she sometimes said, okay, we will waive hospitalization fees to try and help the client.
Well, that comes back to, this is why, again, these lists, those 6 lists I gave earlier. So the cultural practice, the practice culture that you're talking about is fairly anti-euthanasia, and that therefore helps you make sort of decisions, both economic and otherwise, about whether to euthanize or not.
If it's, but also, I mean, Maggie herself is very good at counselling clients. If the animal's been there a few days and things are not looking good, she's then, especially if they've been following her all these years, she's very good at then counselling them, but even then sometimes they would rather take it home.
Can I just bring you back to something? I meant to ask that when you said, your first experience, one of your first experiences, one of your more traumatic experience was the person who was absolutely distraught with the cat, and you decided that maybe it was better to bail with your nurse who was white.
His wife was also there.
Yeah. How was the wife? Was she emotionally...
She was trying to talk to him.
All right.
She was trying to, comfort him.
Mm-hmm. So that's good to clarify, because I was actually going to challenge you as to whether you again, some of these questions can be a little bit confronting, but whether you felt that you'd, foregone your humanity by walking out on someone who was alone, but he wasn't alone.
He said his wife, but it was just
just a traumatic situation.
It was
stressful.
A traumatic situation.
I understand. But he wasn't left on his own, because I was just thinking myself as to how I'd react if I'd walked out on someone if he had no one else to comfort him, but he had someone there to comfort him for his bereavement.
When I first started practicing Yucca, my boss said always reverse in when you go, so you can get away quickly. And then also sometimes you have to take the bodies with you, and you don't want to be seen putting it in a bag. So you
reverse in. I like that. Well, actually, that brings us on to theme 2 now: humane endings.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, your last comment before I dragged you back to that scenario or that anecdote that you talked about was, Maggie's very good at counselling people, but sometimes they still want to take them home. So, that, although I dragged you back to that first comment, that was the perfect lead into humane endings. What do you define a humane ending as?
Humane ending for a life. I mean, if they would just go home and just fall asleep and not wake up, that would be great.
That would be great, but that's not realistic. So what is humane ending?
If they...
What's your criteria?
Suffering. I mean, that's the thing, no suffering, but then you start thinking, well, what is suffering? And are these animals, because they're semi-comatose sometimes, some of them. And
that still brings me back, I'm still pushing on this. So what are your criteria for deciding that a humane ending is necessary? I mean, so I'll put it in the
question. If
question.
The animal is terminally ill and there's no hope of recovering, and they've been slowly getting worse and worse.
So, again, what are the criteria? Slowly getting worse and worse, but... No
terrible prognosis, poor prognosis.
But if it's still bright and alert and it's still got a few more months or a few more weeks, that's not...
No, they're fine. I mean...
So, all right.
We see animals with cancer that are still bright and alert for a while, and then they start wasting away.
So wasting is one thing that really starts setting off the alarm bell.
Can't walk anymore.
Ambulatory, right? What else?
If they start showing seizures or vomiting.
Yeah, so medical conditions, serious medical conditions.
Yeah, serious medical conditions.
Have you ever heard of, because you made one comment that sometimes the cats go home and having been to the vet and are just hanging on and get home waiting to sort of die. So that brought me, that comment is not again uncommon. So it always leads me into the question about sentience. When you're making these decisions, is it ever consciously in your head that this is a sentient animal who has an appreciation of life, enjoys life, wants to live, and yet you're taking this life away? So does an awareness by you of sentience ever come into your decisions, or is it not there? It's just...
No, it's often there actually. I mean, I had one a week or two ago where he was going downhill. He had stopped eating. He was not moving. He was in hospital. We put in a feeding tube, and then he actually got worse. Just didn't respond. And then the owner said she can't make a decision. And I said, well, we'll take the tube out, and you can make the decision tomorrow. And when we took out the tube, he was much more alert. Then she could even make the decision even less. And I said, I'm just going to send him home. I think he wants to go home. He doesn't want to be. And she said once he got home, he was fine 4 days. And then he passed away.
And he passed away, or you put him down?
No, she brought his body in.
Brought his body in.
And she actually said she could see he wasn't well, and she said, it's okay, you can go, and half an hour later he was gone.
Really? So that's interesting, yeah.
I've seen that a few times.
So, I mean...
and the other thing which I've heard of with dogs is they're not good, and they're on their own, and when the owners walk in through the door, like a heart attack or whatever, then they die. But they don't die, they're waiting for the owners to
come home. Yeah. So you don't, and again, I don't have a right or wrong answer, but you don't think that's anthropomorphic. You really feel there's an element of sentience awareness of relationship between the owner and the companion animal.
I think there's bonds there that we don't appreciate always.